Giacomo, you're here as the voice of law enforcement in many ways, and since the days of Cain and Abel, there has constantly been a violent criminal element as some feature of American society. And the lives we all get to live are lashed to whether or not we put that violent criminal element in charge or whether or not we constrain it for the sake of people who want freedom. And so my question for you is, when the day one memo of Alvin Bragg changes the way resisting arrest is treated, so people can resist arrest against law enforcement and not actually face a consequence for that, what does that do to the enterprise of policing?
Well, it makes the officers and the detectives on the street, their job, that much harder. Everything becomes confrontational or physical, and they put themselves, the police officers and detectives, are in harm's way.
Well, now, we don't want to do that, but I have only a moment left, and I have to address this matter of crime rates that my colleagues keep talking about. And to the extent that there is an impact on crime rates in major cities, I would suggest that that is exactly what you get with the Sorosization of the United States justice system. And in places like New Orleans, Louisiana, in places like Tampa, Florida, in Jacksonville, Florida, in Tucson, Arizona, increasingly George Soros is putting in upwards of $40 million to elect 75 DAs to be able to engage in these downgrades. And by the way, not only are they downgrading the violent things, they can't even win the cases they try. Mr. Holden, you pointed out the fact that Alvin Bragg is actually terrible at losing in court, and since I don't have time, I would ask you for the record, since he keeps losing all of his cases, we might opine as to why, and we might seek a better utilization of the federal resources that we provide. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Let me indicate I abhor crime. I abhor victimization, the victims that suffer. I want to prevent crime. I want to pay tribute to all of the law enforcement in this room and outside and those in Houston, Texas, from where I come from, of which I have a deep and abiding affection and relationship with. As a Democrat, I will not sit here, as my predecessor said, Barbara Jordan, and see the diminution of the Constitution, the destruction of what we believe in and our values. I want to stand here and be supportive of everyone who is before us, but I want to do it in a way that is befitting the patriotism of this nation, the very soldiers that are on front lines wearing uniforms are people of color and otherwise. I abhor anti-Semitism, if you will. I abhor people being violated through domestic violence, and it was Democrats who fought extensively for the Violence Against Women Act, which has put a lot of money in the state of New York and other states. Let us work together. Let us find facts that really address this question. And that is what I'm going to try to do. First, I think it is important to note that the monies that the Republicans want to cut are monies that would help victims. We don't want victims, but we need to have resources. My own crime victims in Houston say, we're lonely. We need to be taken care of after the incident. And I agree. And I brought money to the Houston Police Department. Let me ask Ms. Vaughn, there are many things that we can do better. Excuse me, Ms. Fisher. There are many things that we can do better. And I'd clearly like you to talk about the importance of a storage bill. I've introduced the Kimberly Vaughn Safe Storage Act. What does that do in terms of bringing down gun violence? And my time is short, so I appreciate it.
Thank you, Representative. We need safe storage laws to ensure that children can't access guns that shouldn't have them, to ensure that individuals who are in crisis can't access them and potentially commit suicide and mass shootings. Safe storage laws work. We have a strong one here in New York State, and Congress should enact one as well. And
can I just ask a yes or no, are mandatory red flag laws good?
Yes.
Should we rush to Washington and implement a ban the assault weapons?
Yes.
And can we do better in passing stronger gun safety legislation? We know we've had one bill, but can we do better?
We absolutely can do better, and we need comprehensive reform, and we need it urgently for all Americans.
Mr. Kessler, can you quickly respond to the question of violence? Can you, under oath as you've taken, affirm that violence or gun violence in a myriad of ways is going down in this state? I just want to hear you say it again.
Yeah, it is absolutely true, and it's also 18% below the national average in New York City. And New York State has a far lower murder rate than the country as a whole.
Quickly, thank you very much. Ms. Fisher, what percentage of guns are found in New York come from other places?
Over 70% of guns that are used in crimes in New York City and across New York State come from out of state, the iron pipeline from weak gun law states, including Florida and the Carolinas and Georgia.
Let me ask the council member Holden, thank you for your service. You said you're a lifelong New Yorker?
That's correct.
And you therefore lived in New York in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and so
Yes.
on?
Yep.
Did you say in an article recently, I've never seen the lawlessness we're seeing now?
Yep.
And so do you realize and recognize this pamphlet, Fear City, in the 1970s? And so apparently we've had some ups and downs. This is Fear City, a survival guide for visitors in New York City of New York by NYPD, 1975. I ask unanimous consent to put this in the record.
Without objection.
And so we've had our moments. We do better if we work together rather than we cast about what is bad and what isn't. Let's work together. Let's get the funds. Let's get the appropriate justice for these victims. Let me quickly go to this point. We are here wrongly because you're here rightly. You are here rightly. But we're here wrongly because District Attorney Bragg, because of Trump, has been called, he called him, a saurus-backed animal, a dog whistle. And then, of course, other Republicans have followed likely. By the way, Republicans have threatened to defund the ATF, alcohol, tobacco, and firearm, that does a lot on trafficking. This office, because of these threats, white powder has come. He's had threatening and racially charged calls into the district attorney. I indicated to you my belief and love in democracy. I want justice for you. But this is an absurd and poor reflection of who we are as Americans, who I am as a Houstonian. And I believe in bringing people together. We need to bring people together and work on the solutions. I ask unanimous consent to place in the record 3 are charged with selling ghost guns,
Without
including
objection.
assault weapons.
Without
I'm
objection.
asking unanimous consent.
Yeah, without objection.
And the welcome to Fear City, unanimous consent.
Without objection.
With that, I yield back. I thank you, and I thank the witnesses out of the bottom of my heart.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair now recognizes himself for 5 minutes. Mr. Holden, you were born in New York City?
Yes.
You were raised in New York City, went to grade school and high school here in the city?
Yep.
Went to college in New York City? You got,
Yes.
I think I looked, you got an associate degree, an undergrad degree, postgrad degree, all from universities here in New York City. Is that right?
Yes, I did, Chair.
You're a professor at a university here in New York City?
Right. 44 years.
All your professional career has been spent here in New York City, is that right?
Yes.
And you received a Lifetime Achievement Award for your volunteer work from the Queen Civic Group. Is that
Yeah.
right? For your
Yes.
work here in the city.
Yes.
You love this town, don't you?
I love it.
I mean, I think Mr. Gates is right. I think America loves this town.
Right.
Whether you're a Yankees fan, a Mets fan, a Giants fan, a Jets fan, the Statue of Liberty, Ellis Island, Broadway, Wall Street. Americans love this city. Maybe most, I think, Americans appreciate the people of this town and the example they showed the country after that tragic day of 9/11. Do you agree with all that, Mr. Holden?
I agree with that 100%.
But right now, the policies being implemented by this district attorney are going to ruin this great city. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I do.
It's scary, isn't it? Scary what you see. It's scary what Miss Harrison's had to endure, what Mr. Albus had to endure, what Miss Brames had to endure, and what Mr. Borgen has had to endure. And it's driven by that Day One memo. That Day One memo which sent a message to this town, to the bad guys in this town. You can do bad things, and you're not going to get prosecuted. Do you agree with all that, Mr. Holden?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, it's scary. Soft on crime policies are going to ruin this great city, and that's why we're here. It's happened in other cities, as Mr. Gates pointed out. That's why this is not the only hearing. We're going to have other hearings. We'll go to wherever we need to go. But this is something that has to happen, has to stop. Justice isn't supposed to be political. Now, Mr. Holden, you're a Democrat, right?
Yes, I am.
But it shouldn't matter. Republican or Democrat, I think as a lot of people said, it should not matter, should it? What's the answer, Mr. Holden? What would you recommend?
My allegiance is to my constituents. I live
Well
here. For
said.
71 years, I've lived in New York City. I've seen bad times, high crime, 2,000 murders a year in the 80s. I've not seen the lawlessness that I'm seeing today in New York City in my lifetime. That means we're afraid to go anywhere.
Let me
There's
just be
things-
clear. So in 71 years, Your life here in this great city, it's never been as bad as it is today.
And I've had so many friends leaving this town because they just see the quality of life dropping. They go out on the street, there's people driving down the wrong way with electric scooters, there's people robbing stores. You know that all the pharmacies in New York City have to be under lock and key. You have to go in a case. It's so bad, these small crimes, that Mr. Bragg has said he's not going to prosecute. You don't send that message out there. And that's why we disagree. We're the same party, but we totally disagree on that. Again, my allegiance is not to the party. It's to my constituents and where I live. And again, I plan to live here, until I die. But I don't want to see it go down the drain.
Yeah. You're standing up for the folks you get to represent in Queens as part of the city council. Mr. Borgen, Ms. Fisher earlier said bad guys go into other states and buy guns illegally, and the Democrats' response is take away guns from law-abiding citizens. Is that going to work, Mr. Borgen?
Absolutely not. I just want to say one thing. I sit here and listen. You're on one side, you're on one side. When Ronald Reagan was president, him and Tip O'Neill had regular meetings, got together and worked together in Congress.
That's right.
I don't understand why I have to sit here, whether Republican or Democrat. I'm a Republican, by the way. I now vote in Florida, and I'm a registered voter in Florida. I have a Florida driver's license. Based on, I'm not planning to stay, but fact of the matter is, if everybody would work together and not sit here and say, this party says this about Trump, about this, it's just, it doesn't make any sense. But the fact of the matter is, the criminals will get guns either way. You can do whatever you want. The criminals are going to get guns. They always have gotten guns. It's not going to change. It's not going to change. So you can sit here till your face blue in the face. You can say Congress are going to outlaw gun sales across America. They're going to get guns.
Yep.
The criminals will get guns. And there's nothing you can do about it. That's life. And Mr. Kessler sits here and says, we have to sit and take it. I never heard someone say to me, you have to take crime. I live in Long Island. Crime has now come to my area, out in the 5 towns, in a very nice suburban area. We have had robberies now in stores, and now the crime is coming toward me because I guess New York City's tapped out. They can't rob the pharmacies anymore. But they're going to get guns, nothing you can do about it, absolutely nothing.
Bad guys aren't necessarily stupid. They're just bad. They're going to figure out a way to do bad things. And the key is to put bad guys behind bars so they can't harm others. And when you send that message, things get better.
There's a segment of society that always going to be criminals. It's been from day one. Nothing you can do about it. But if Mr. Bragg would lock people up, it would save a lot of headaches in New York City and save lives.
Thank you, Mr. Borgen. Gentlemen, the chair now recognizes the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Johnson, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this is a sham hearing. It's not about crime in New York. It's an effort to impede and ultimately suppress the prosecution of Donald Trump. And if you don't believe it, then all you need to do is connect the dots. First, Manhattan District Attorney Bragg announced his criminal charges against ex-President Trump. Then, House Judiciary Republicans abused their power by subpoenaing testimony and records from D.A. Bragg about the ongoing prosecution. And next, they bring this sham hearing to Manhattan, supposedly about crime. But if my colleagues across the aisle were really concerned and really cared about reducing violent crime, they'd work with Democrats to pass common sense gun laws. There are too many gun deaths in this country, and that's why I have joined with my fellow Democrats to co-sponsor bills that would ban assault weapons, strengthen background checks, and fund research into gun violence prevention. Meanwhile, MAGA Republicans continue to resist even the most basic reforms like universal background checks. If Republicans really wanted to stop violent crime, they would be in D.C. right now, working with Democrats to pass common sense gun legislation. Instead, like jackbooted thugs, they've descended on New York City using violent crime as their pretext. The MAGA Republican extremists are not interested in gun violence or even knife violence. The Republican witnesses who have used their time to criticize District Attorney Bragg have served as props in a MAGA Broadway production. The real purpose in coming to New York City
Can
The
we have
real
order?
purpose-
Hey,
The real purpose in coming to
gentlemen,
New
we'll
York
suspend.
City,
Gentlemen, we'll suspend.
stop the clock.
Gentlemen, we'll
Stop the clock.
suspend. For the audience, I've said several times now that the committee has to be in order. If anyone continues, then we're going to have to escort some people out.
Please don't talk that.
so-
Please don't talk down to us witnesses, please.
Yep. The gentleman from Georgia controls the time. Mr. Johnson, you can proceed.
The real purpose in coming to New York City is to harass, intimidate, and threaten Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg. We are here because Manhattan District Attorney Bragg announced the indictment of former President Trump, and MAGA United States House Republicans have responded by using their power to try to help ex-President Trump beat the 34 counts of fraud that he has been charged with. MAGA Republican extremists have defended the January 6th insurrectionists, and they are out here today serving as Trump's bulldogs, trying to scare a duly elected district attorney from following the facts where they lead and enforcing the law. It is just one more sign that MAGA Republicans are a clear and present danger to our democracy.